What if I told you there was a way to actually predict which one of your clients is going to churn in your agency? Today, I'm going to be showing you how me and my partners actually track health score in our agencies and how we actually use this single KPI to actually decrease our churn rate. We'll be going through what health score actually is, how to actually track it in your agency using a very simple Google Sheet that we're going to set up from scratch, and how to actually use automation to bring this all together. If you don't know who I am, my name is Leo. I'm the CEO and founder of Fluxomate, an operation agency which helps agency owners all over the world set up scale-proof systems. KPIs like the ones we're going to be talking about today play a massive role in the agency's success. So if you want to be able to literally predict your churn rate within your agency, then watch on to the end because we're not holding anything back. Let's get straight into it, guys. All right, guys. So this is actually how you're going to be tracking your health score. And before I get started, let me just have a quick disclaimer. Firstly, this is just an example. There's obviously other ways to do this. This is just the one I'm going to be talking about in this video. Secondly, don't focus too much on the actual tools I'm using. You'll get much more value from this video if you focus on the actual structure. So for example, in this video, we're going to be using Google Sheet. If you want to use another tool that's similar to Google Sheet, feel free to do that. Just copy and paste the kind of methodology and the frameworks of everything I'm talking about and copy and paste it in your specific scenarios. And thirdly, we don't hold anything back, so be ready to actually enjoy yourself. So this video is going to be split into 3 different parts. Firstly, we're going to go ahead and actually define what health score actually is. Then we're going to go ahead and actually build that Google Sheet that you saw in the introduction. And lastly, I'm going to be talking about automation and how to actually automate the tracking of this specific health score. So firstly, let's get into it. What actually is health score? And for all of you that just clicked on this video to actually figure out how to track it, if you already know what it is, skip to this part in the video right here because I'll bring you to the section where we actually start building a Google Sheet. But for those of you who don't know, don't worry. Health score is basically a key performance indicator that measures how satisfied a client is by measuring several key performance indicators across different departments and basically comparing them to your usual results. The way we're actually going to split up in terms of actually defining it is 3 different parts. Firstly, we're going to define the key performance indicators that you're actually going to be tracking related to that specific health score. Then we're going to define the weights for each indicator. Like I said, because the health score is made up of a bunch of different indicators, some indicators might be worth more than others. So we basically need to weigh them up and basically value them on their importance and the overall contribution to the overall health score. And then we're going to actually need to interpret a health score by creating different ranges. So let's get straight into it. The first thing we need to do is actually define what a health score actually is. So like I said, our health score is basically going to be broken down into a bunch of different individual indicators, KPIs, metrics, whatever you want to call them. So in this example, we're going to be a content agency, and I'll show you a simple example of a couple indicators that you could track them. So for example, we split up into 3 different categories: content KPIs, conversion KPIs, financial KPIs. And these are the KPIs we're going to be tracking in this example for this content agency throughout the entire video. For content and KPIs, I split it between short form and long form. So for both short form and long form, we have the engagement rate, the number of new followers, and the number of impressions. Then we have some conversion KPIs, so basically the number of leads we're actually bringing in, the community growth, and the amount of money chat conversations. And then we have some financial KPIs, revenue growth. If you haven't understood yet, we're basically going to be comparing every single one of these to our usual KPIs, or the ones that we would expect for clients, and then generate a sort of percentage of how this specific client is performing based on their numbers. This is one of the best numbers that you actually need to track in your business. And I'm very, very heavy on this when it comes to working with our partners. Now, I will say this is the simple version of it. We're not tracking too many different departments and we're not tracking too many different KPIs. The reason I kept it simple is because I want to make it very, very easy for you to just copy and paste this directly into your agency. A more advanced version will look something like this, where for each one of the different departments, right, like content performance metrics, conversion metrics, client satisfaction metrics, engagement metrics, you have a bunch of different KPIs, overall tracking maybe about 12 or something, just to generate that health score. But like I said, we're going to keep this as simple as I can just to make this very, very easy for you to just literally copy and paste this straight into your agency. And once you've gone ahead and actually broken down the health score into the KPIs you're going to be tracking, or indicators, I should say, sorry, just like I did here for the content agency, now we move on to the second stage, which is basically calculating the weight for each indicator. Now, like I said earlier, one indicator is not going to be equal to another indicator because something like revenue, for example, is going to be more valuable to your customer than a number of comments on a video. So this is why rather than making them all equal, whereas for example, if you have 10 indicators making them 10% each, we basically associate different percentages to different indicators to reflect their importance in the overall health score. So rather than having 10 indicators with 10% each, we'd have, let's say, 10 indicators with some 3%, some 20%, some 7%. Once again, just to kind of indicate the importance of each indicator in the overall health score. Now, when we actually go ahead and build a spreadsheet, I've made it very, very easy for you to actually do this. And I'm going to show you how to actually build that out live. For now, let's go over the 3 steps that you actually need to basically work out the weights for the different KPIs or indicators that you're actually tracking within your health score. The first step is, and this is probably the most important step that you need to think about throughout throughout this whole process is ask yourself, what do my clients actually care about? At the end of the day, everything you're doing is for your clients. So you need to make sure you're actually fitting their needs. So as we go through this process of basically thinking about different weights for the different indicators as part of the health score, think about, okay, what do my clients really care about? The second step is basically to assign the percentage to the different departments, I guess, or sections of the health score that we created previously. So for my example, if you go back here, we can see we have three different sections. We have the content KPIs, the conversion KPIs, and the financial KPIs. So I want you to assign a percentage to each one of the sections. So in this example, I gave content KPIs of 40%, I've gave conversion KPIs 40%, and then I give financial KPIs 20%. Once you've gone ahead and actually assigned a percentage to different sections, you just want to do the exact same thing, but do it for the individual indicators. And obviously, they're going to be made up of the total amount in the section. So, for example, in the content KPIs, let's say you're tracking 4 different KPIs, these should all add up to 40%. Same as thing for the conversion KPIs. And once again, guys, throughout this whole process, just listen to what your client actually wants, because at the end of the day, they're the ones you actually need to retain into your services. So if you're not meeting their needs, there's no point doing any of this. A pro tip I'll give you right now that'll make your life a bit easier is you can literally even interview your clients and ask them, okay, what metrics do you really care about? Or what metrics, if they were increased by 50%, will make you want to stay? That'll give you a good indication of the most important metrics for your clients, and that will heavily affect the different percentages that you actually have. And another thing that's important to say, guys, is that these percentages, whilst they'll be fixed at the start, they're very easy to kind of change, especially in a spreadsheet we're going to build out in a second. I made it very easy for you to basically edit the weights of each different section on a consistent basis without having to change too much of the spreadsheet. So it makes your life a bit easier, and you can always kind of test different things and see what's working best for your clients. So now that we've basically broken down the health score into the different indicators and also worked out the different weights for each indicator, now we move on to the last step, which is basically trying to interpret the health score. So a health score is a percentage. So we basically want to give certain ranges, which means different things. So this example of what we're going to be using in our video. So anything over 100% is going to be optimized. Anything 80 to 100% is going to be excellent. Anything between 60 and 79% is going to be good. Anything between 40 and 59% is going to be at risk. Anything below 40% is going to be critical. It's very important you actually create these different ranges, and not just the different ranges. As you can see, here I kind of gave an overview of what that range actually means and what potential next steps are. This is going to be very important because, guys, when we're actually tracking this whole score, it'll be cool to actually set something like this up and then automate it so everything's just clearly laid out for you. But if you're not actually using the data that we're actually building out, then there's no point actually doing it. So it's really important that you actually make it easy for yourself to actually understand what each of the numbers mean, so that when someone's health score drops below 40%, for example, you know exactly what the next steps are and how to actually boost it back up to its normal rate. Now that we've actually defined the health score, let's move on to the second stage, which is actually building a Google Sheet. Now, in this video, I'm going to be using Google Sheet to actually do this. In all honesty, I would not recommend using Google Sheet. I think you're way better off using something like Airtable or SmartSuite, or in best case scenario, an internal tool builder like NoLoco, which is what we've done at a ton of previous videos on the channel. However, in this example, I will be using Google Sheet once again because everyone's got Google Sheet on their laptop, so it's very easy for you to literally just copy and paste this straight into your agency. And I will say, guys, if you do want the template to this spreadsheet, you can check out the first link in the description to get free access to a digital product, which has all the resources of everything I talked about in this video. But let's go over what we're actually going to be building. This is the Google Sheet we're actually building, which is our health score tracker. This is where we're going to associate different weights to different things, as well as the benchmark values of what we can expect. Within the client sheet, we're going to be tracking all the different KPIs here, split in the different departments with different formulas to basically automatically calculate the KPI for performance based on its benchmark. And then we're going to have this very clean monthly summary page, which firstly allows us to get an average of every single results that we have for a health score. But also, if you want to look at results for specific clients, or even results for specific dates for different clients, it will go ahead and do that and compare it to the benchmarks. We're going to be building out this whole thing from scratch. Like I said, Google Sheets isn't the most ideal solution, especially if you're really looking to set up a really scale-proof system. But I think this is the easiest way to actually show you how to track something like this, because everyone's got Google Sheets on their laptop. So it's very easy for you to copy and paste it. So if you want access to this template without having to watch me build it from scratch, then you can check out the first link in the description to get free access to something you can just download straight into your laptop. For now though, let's make a new Google Sheet and actually start from scratch building this out. Alright guys, as you can see, we started off with a completely blank sheet, and now we're going to actually build everything out together. So this kind of health score tracker is going to be split into 3 different sheets. The first sheet is going to allow us to set the different weights and the different benchmarks for the KPIs or the indicators that we actually highlighted in the previous section. Remember, health score is made up of a bunch of different indicators that we're tracking. So if you haven't already kind of laid out the different indicators that you need to track within your own health score, pause the video, take a second to think think about it, and then come back. The second sheet is going to allow us to basically track the different client data. We're basically going to be using this as a database to have every single one of our clients' data every single month. And then the third sheet is probably the most important one. That's when we're going to have an overview of that specific client data and different averages and everything like that. So let's get straight into it, guys. So the first thing I want to do is actually have a place where I can firstly lay out the different indicators that I actually have, as well as lay out the different weights and the benchmarks for what those indicators should actually be. So firstly, I'm going to go ahead and name this KPI weights, because this is basically what this is. Then I'm going to move over and name this KPIs. This is where we're going to store the different values that we actually need. And then in this column is going to be the different weights. And then here's going to be on benchmarks. So what we actually expect those results to actually be. So like I showed you earlier, these are the 10 different KPIs or indicators, I should say, that I'm tracking for this specific video. And once again, in this example, I'm a content agency. So we have the engagement rate for short form content, new followers for short form content, impressions for short form content, engagement rate for long form content, new followers for long form content, impressions for long form content, leads for long form content, community growth, money chat conversions, and the revenue growth. Now it's time we actually assign the different weights for each section. Now, like I said, this is going to heavily depend on what your client's specific needs and what they actually care about. Well, for this example, I just threw in a couple of random numbers just to give an idea of how easy it is to actually change this. But remember, within this sheet, this is going to be included in our different formulas for the different calculations we actually do when calculating the health score. So for example, let's say 1 month we have this 50%, but then we realize, okay, clients don't really care about engagement rate too much. In reality, they care more about getting leads in. It's very, very easy to actually change this to 20% just like that and reflect how the health score is actually calculated, once again, based on what your clients actually want. The last thing we need to do is actually throw in different benchmarks. So these are basically what you expect the health score to actually be, or in an ideal situation, or even on an average situation for your clients. In this example, once again, I just threw in a couple random numbers. So for now, I'm happy with that. Let's just format this a bit more. I'm going to go ahead and change this to black. I'm gonna put this to white. And over here, I'm also gonna add a total for the percentages because there's no real indication of how we're actually doing this. So for this, I'm gonna put equals sum and then put P3 to B23. Perfect. As you can see, that's 100%. Obviously, the weight should never be over 100% because that doesn't really make sense. So let's go ahead and format this to make it nice and clear again. And cool, guys, I'm very happy with this. Now we can move on to the next step, which is actually creating the sheet for the client data. Let me just go ahead and rename this to health score. Perfect. So let's go ahead and create a new sheet. And now we're going to create a sheet that's going to be tracking all of our different client data. So first thing, I'm going to start with tracking different things from the client name, the client email, the ID for the specific client, the actual date. This is going to be very, very important in the next step, the actual health score, and then the range we have. And now I've just gone ahead and actually pasted every single KPI. But what you'll notice is I didn't just copy and paste the KPIs. Next to each KPI, I also copy and pasted this section right here, which is KPI performance. This is basically the column where we're going to be comparing the engagement rate, for example, to the benchmark value and splitting our percentage. And then we're going to use this percentage in our actual health score calculation. As you can see, I did the exact same thing for every single one of the indicators that we're actually tracking. Let me just reformat this slightly to make it look a bit more appealing and not so cramped. Perfect. So as you can see, I just kind of laid it out a bit more. I'm also going ahead and change this one to black. Once again, just make it pop out a bit more, make it clear that this is actually a header. Now, the only thing I'm going to change is add in different indications for the different KPIs. Now, obviously, you don't have to do this. This is just me kind of reformatting the spreadsheet just to make it look a bit cleaner. So you can go ahead and do that. So perfect. Cool. Now, this is a very, very long spreadsheet. And once we start getting more data in, I would have want this to basically be isolated like this. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to go ahead and basically freeze these different rows here. If I go to view and then go to freeze and then freeze up to column F. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for these rows right here. So let's do these 3 rows. I'm going to go to view, freeze, and freeze up to row 3. So now if we scroll, this is going to stay here and we're going to have that client ID as well as the different information always there. So it's very, very easy to actually view the different data. Cool. Now that's our page set up. Now we can actually start setting up different formulas. But before we do that, it's a lot easier setting up different formulas when you already have some data. So I'm just going to import some data in from something I actually did previously. So guys, as you can see, I've just imported some random data of some different fake companies with different IDs, different dates, everything like that. I've also included different indicators. So we have engagement rate, new followers. Once again, these are just random numbers to give you an idea when we're actually building out these different formulas within a Google Sheet, just so we can actually get a real idea of what these would look like when in action. So the first thing I'm going to do before we actually create the health score formula, I want to go ahead and create the KPI performance formula. Now remember, all we're doing here is basically comparing this number to the benchmark and then getting some sort of percentage to see how well it's performing compared to the benchmark that we actually set. So all we're going to do here, we're going to go over to the formula tab and I'm going to make it a bit bigger just to make it easier. I'm going to press equals. I'm going to enter this right here, which is G for the specific result. And then I want to divide this by the benchmark within our health score sheet. So I'm going to go press this and then press benchmark. And that's pretty much it. All I want to do is now just close the bracket there and I forgot to actually open it. So just like that. So now you can basically see it's basically comparing the specific indicator to the actual benchmark and giving us a percentage. Now, the only thing I'm going to change here is making this a percentage, because as you can see, if I were to just drag this along, it's going to go ahead and change it to C4, which we don't want. We want it to stay to C3 just so it's relevant to that specific benchmark. So to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to add some dollar signs here. Don't ask me why this works, but it's just Google Sheets. And now if we drag this on, you see it'll change the specific data point is actually referencing, but C3 will see the same, just like that. Now, I'm basically going to go ahead and do that for every single one of the other KPIs. This is a bit of a long process, so feel free to just speed this part up. I'll include in the video so you can get an idea, but I'm literally just repeating what I did here. In the equal sign, put in the bracket, entering this specific value, and then dividing it by its relevant benchmark, which in this example will be new followers, closing a bracket and adding the little dollar signs just to make sure it stays on C4 and doesn't move on to any indicators by accident. So I'm just going to get and speed up. If you do want to, feel free to slow it down so you can actually watch me do everything. So guys, as you can see, we've gone ahead and laid out the key performance formulas for each one of the KPIs or indicators that were actually set out on part of a health score. The next step is actually to create a formula to basically compare these and get average health score. Now, I'm not going to lie, this formula is a bit complicated, but I'm going to walk you through how I actually set up. So if you ever want to amend this, you actually understand how this works. What we're doing here is we're basically timesing the key performance indicator by its relevant weight right here. And then we're dividing the whole thing by 100 to get an overall percentage. So for example, for engagement rate, we're just timesing H4, which is just the key performance indicator, and then timesing it by the actual weight, which is a percentage over here. And then we're just repeating that for each one of the key performance indicators to get overall percentage of the health score. Now, once again, very, very important. If you're laying this out in any other way, it's important you actually include these little dollar signs, because if we go ahead and drag this on, you can see the actual benchmarks, or the weights I should say, will stay the same. However, if you didn't have this, it would basically move one down the same way it's moving it down for the different rows, so it tracks the relevant data, and it wouldn't work. So make sure you actually include these dollar signs. But this formula is very, very simple. We're basically just calculating the KPI indicators or the performance of those indicators for each individual indicator, times it by its relevant weight, so we can actually include it as a fair share of the calculation, and just dividing the whole thing by 100 to get a percentage. As you can see, we have a wide range of the percentages, which it's all good and well. However, we don't have a real indication of what these percentages actually mean in a moment. So that's why this range section is very important. Here, we're basically going to add a formula to basically interpret the different things that are actually happening within our health score. And it's a very, very simple formula once again. All we're doing here is we're saying if condition. So if E4, which is a relevant thing, is over 100%, they will just label it as outstanding. If it's over or equal to 80%, it's all labeled as excellent. If it's over or equal to 6%, it'll be good. Over and equal to 40% will be at risk, and under 4% it will be critical. And as you can see, I've dragged it on here. And if I move it down here, we get clear indication of what that client performance actually is like just by looking at his health score. Once again, health score is a percentage. So it's very, very important that in the actual setup, when actually deciding where your health score is going to be, you also include the different ranges, because now we can have an action step for this specific client who's at risk, for example, or we can have an action step for the people that are excellent. You get the idea. It's just very, very important to actually have a range to actually understand the results from your health score. So that's the client sheet basically done. I'm just going to go ahead and actually rename this to client and then sheet. Now it's time we actually set up the final sheet, which is basically kind of like a little dashboard, where it's make it very, very easy for you to actually track the health score of different clients all in one place, rather than having to look at all this data, which over time, if you have a bunch of different clients and you're doing this for over a year, this is going to get very, very, very long. So we don't want to look at this. Let's make a nice little dashboard to make your life a bit easier, and you can easily analyze data and see different things like averages for different clients to certain dates, or even the averages of entire clients throughout the entire lifespan with you guys. So let's go ahead and open another sheet here. And this is going to be our monthly summary. So the first thing we actually set up here is a way to actually select different clients. So for that, I'm going to enter select client here, and then I'm going to put select date. And here I'm basically going to set different data validation rules, which takes all the different companies that we have in the previous sheet. So for that, I'm going to select that specific B1, which is specific cell, go with the data, and then go over to data validation. And here is basically I'm going to add another rule where it's going to collect this monthly summary, but here it's going to be dropped down from a range. And then for the range, I'm just going to go back to our client sheet and select the client name. Now I will change this so it doesn't actually include the header. So I'll go A4 onwards. I'm going to go ahead and press OK. So now if we go back here, you can see we have the different companies and we don't have any duplicates, which is very, very important because within this client sheet, we're not just tracking one company once. As you can see, company A exists twice, company B exists twice. Over time, the same company is going to have the same results. In this example, we're doing it once a month. Obviously, it's going to depend on how often you're doing it. You can even do this every day if you wanted to. So it's important we don't have actually any duplicates there. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for the date. I'm going to go over to data. I'm going to enter data validation. I'm going to go ahead and close this and do that again. So data validation, add a new rule, and it's going to be a drop down from range again. And I'm just going to go ahead and select the dates this time. So by going over to the client sheet, selecting D, and then once again, changing this to D4, just so it doesn't include that actual header. I'm going to press done. And now if we go back to our monthly summary, you can see we have the two different dates in this example. Now this does automatically update. So for example, if I go ahead and add here and then change this to March, now within our validation tool, we also have March as the option. So the more your data grows, the more this is actually going to grow. Cool. So I'm very, very happy with this so far. Now let's actually figure out how to include different formulas to automatically import that data in and do different averages and everything like that. Now, I'm not going to lie here. These formulas are a bit complicated. So I'm only going through a live walkthrough of them or else this video will be way too long. But once again, I'm going to be showing you every single one of the formulas. And also there's a free template you can just download in the description to import all of them automatically within your Google Sheet without having to watch me type it out. But let's actually set up the format. So we'll leave A4 empty, just create a bit of space. And here we're just going to copy and paste the different indicators that I actually have set up. I'm also going to indicate two different things. This is going to be the results tab, and this is going to be the benchmarks. And here, all I'm going to do is just copy and paste those benchmarks that we had in the previous sheet. So if I go to health score, and I just literally just copy and paste these and include it in a monthly summary, just like that. Now, this is where it gets a bit complicated, guys, but don't worry. I'm going to try and explain it as well as I can. Now we're going to include different formulas. Now, I'll show you the formula just to give you an understanding of what it actually does. But once again, feel free to just copy and paste it straight in. You don't really have to understand it. It's basically a bunch of different if formulas. So basically what we're doing here, if B1, which is this column right here, and B2 are empty, it will just calculate an average of that specific client data. The only reason I'm doing this is because you're not always going to want to see the data for a specific client. Sometimes you might just only see the average for your company or even average for a specific date. So this is basically what we're doing here. And then if it's not empty, we're basically matching that different data and pulling it in. So if I go ahead and press enter, now you can see it's bringing us the average for every single one of the clients. However, if I go ahead and choose this for company D, for example, now it's just going to go ahead and bring me the average for company D, which should be a percentage just like that. Now I'll basically set up a ton of these formulas for each one of the indicators for you guys. So now I'm just going to copy and paste every single one of them in. It is a very, very similar formula because once again, it's just checking if it's empty, and if it's not empty, it's just importing the average for the specific date. One thing we're going to clean up in a second here is these long numbers. We obviously don't care about that in many decimals, but we're going to go ahead and deal with that in a second. So let me just copy and paste each one of the formulas here. I'm not going to speed this up. So if you don't want to access the free resource, you can just take a screenshot of this and import it straight away. We have new followers. Now we go on to impressions. So make sure I don't import the wrong formula. Okay, then we have engagement rate, which is right here. We have new followers, then impressions. This is for long form. We have leads, community growth. Nearly done, guys. Money track conversions and revenue growth. Now, I'm glad I kind of did this behind the scenes first because we would have been here for ages if I had to write down every single one of these formulas. But as you can see here, we basically have an average for the data. And we can actually fact check this, right? If I go ahead and firstly convert this to a percentage, but then go over here and just fix this up a bit by moving the decimals down, just like that, because we don't need that much data. And for example, right now it's not selected any date or any specific client. So if I go back to our client sheet and I get an average of our engagement rate, for example, by going over here and going to average is 55.6. As you can see, it's 55.6. Similar exact thing for the health score. If I go over here and get an average of the specific health score, we should see that being 78.4. And if you go back here, it's 78.4. But if I go ahead and select a client, so for example, company D, now it's going to pull up the specific measurements for company D, which for example is 52.52. So if you go to company D and get the average of their two different health scores, is 52.52. And we can do the exact same thing for the date. If you just go ahead and select the date as well for company D, it'll pull us the data for company D for that specific date, which in this example is a second. As you can see, it matches 32.35%. 32.35%. Very cool, guys. Now, I just realized I made a mistake when actually printing this out. It should be one down, but it doesn't really matter because here, this is when I'm going to add a basically average for the actual health score. To actually do that, we have this very, very simple formula, at least compared to everything else we actually built out today. And all this is basically doing is if B2 is empty, which is this specific date right here, it's just going to give us the average formula. And if it's not, it's going to give us the average formula for that specific date. So right now, this is just the average formula for the 1st of March. But if you go ahead and actually delete this, Now it's going to give us the average health score in general for every single company. Cool, guys. The last thing I want to add here is a very, very clear indicator of where we're at. So for this, I'm going to copy this quite long if formula where basically it measures this specific indicator right here and basically copy and paste specific output similar to the different range we have. So if you go ahead and actually select client for this, we can see this person right here has excellent performance. But if you go over to client F, they have good performance at different times. As you can see in this example, they have at-risk performance. This is very, very similar to this. If not, it's actually identical. But because this is going to be the main kind of dashboard where we're going to be tracking the different client data, I thought I might as well add it in here. Cool. The last thing to do here is just format this a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to black, change the writing to white. I'm also going to add another formula here, which basically spits out the company name if it exists. So right here, for example, I'll just copy and paste this simple formula, which basically if it's empty, it will just say average results. However, if it's not empty, it will basically say the company name and just add in results. So for example, in this example, it says company F results. I'll just reformat this for a second. However, if this is empty, it will just spit out average results. And honestly, guys, that's how Google Sheet basically done. Now you can optionally add different things like I did in this example where we built out. All of this is basically different conditional formatters. I'll show you guys what I mean. So in this example, if I go over to format and go conditional formatting, you can see I basically said if any value here is less than a value here, then it'll become red. And if any value here is greater than the value here, it'll become green. That's completely optional. It doesn't really matter. Just a way to kind of clean up the tree a bit more. And like I said at the start, guys, this is just the way I'm doing it. I'm sure there's different ways to track health score. I'm sure there's different ways to actually share this Google Sheet. This is just the way I'm actually showing you guys. And if you want access to this free template, just go to the first link in the description. It's 100% free. I think I'll make your life easier rather than copy and pasting this from scratch with the different formulas, etc. But cool, guys. We've now defined what our health score actually is and then also built a Google Sheet to actually support the tracking of this health score. The last thing I want to talk about is automation. Now, one thing that I always say when it comes to data is out-of-date data or data you're not tracking is basically as useless as no data. If not, it's actually more damaging because you're also driving your car with a blindfold and having the confidence of an F1 driver after drinking a whole bottle of vodka. It's not going to end up well. And it's the exact same thing when it comes to different KPIs. Automation does make your life easier to make sure you're actually keeping this sheet up to date. And there's two different types of automation you can set up. The first one is a reminder automation. Now, says in the name is very, very simple. This is basically automation where, for example, every 30 days, you get a Slack message to one of the employees to actually update this Google Sheet. Now, this isn't a scale-proof solution. It's not the best solution. However, I will say it's better than nothing because at the end of the day, you're still going to have your employees having to be a bit annoyed at constantly updating the sheet and actually maintaining it, which may end up in you having some KPIs which are out of date, which trust me is very, very damaging. So for example, you go back to the sheet, we can have one client who in your head is having an outstanding performance when in reality the performance is at critical level, and without that data there's no real way of knowing. The second automation, which is something I actually suggest setting up and what we set up every single one of our partners in our agencies, is reporting automations. This is basically automation that rather than reminding you every 30 days, it just goes ahead and scrapes that data from relevant platform and adds it to the Google Sheet. Now, I will say this can get very, very messy, especially because we're dealing with a lot of different indicators and importing them all to the Google Sheet is a bit complicated. But this is honestly the best solution if you want a really, really scale-proof system to track different KPIs like health score. The key to this is just having a right platform where you can track the different things such as meta analytics, YouTube analytics, or Instagram analytics and just import automatically. In reality, there's not going to just be one automation. It's going to be a couple automations importing data from different aspects of your business and adding them all to this Google Sheet or whichever database you actually use. This is really the true solution, and I definitely would recommend it over reminders. But if you're just starting out, you just build this Google Sheet, start off with reminders, and over time try and invest maybe an hour of day building out different automations to automatically scrape that data into your sheet, because you'll get much better results, and over the long term you'll be able to actually maintain your sheet, which is the most important thing you actually care about. But guys, that's pretty much it. You now have an understanding of how to actually track your health score. We've gone over how to actually define the health score, how to actually build a Google Sheet to actually host the different data for the health score in a way that's easy for you to manage and actually build out, and we also quickly talked about the different automations you actually need to make this work in a scale-proof manner. Now it's time you actually use the data. There's no point watching this video, building like different things if you're just going to ignore the different data you actually have. Because I promise you, utilizing this data like health score within your agency, it's just a way to take it to the next level. And I've seen this in every single one of the partners that we actually work with after we've gone through the KPI stage, setting up different things like this when it comes to health score, but also other different KPIs. And it's a complete game changer because it gives you a real insight on everything that's happening in your business without having to be completely involved in the business. One thing I would recommend is health score is just one of the numbers you need to track within your business. So if you want to get an idea of 15 other numbers you actually need to track within your agency, you can check out this video right here. We recently released it. And we basically go over 15 other examples like health score of very, very important numbers, which are basically KPIs or metrics that you need to track within your agency to give you a real insight on what's actually going on in your agency. But apart from that, guys, that's it from me today. Make sure to like and subscribe if you found this video valuable. YouTube algorithm will basically put more videos like this on your feed. So if you want to see more videos on how you can use different things like KPIs, automation, internal platforms to set up scale-proof solutions for your agencies, I'd recommend liking and subscribing. Like I said throughout this whole entire video, if you just want to copy and paste this system directly into your agency, you can check out the first link in the description. That will also give you access to our free school community where we have about 80 different agency owners at the moment, all looking to set up scale-proof systems for their agencies. Within there, you also get access to every resource we've ever posted in relation to different YouTube videos where you can just literally copy and paste them straight into your agency to really, really set up scale-proof systems. And like I said, guys, if any of that sounded interesting and you also want one-to-one access to me and my team asking you questions about different videos or different systems, feel free to join. It's 100% free, as with everything else we do. We have a ton of different resources there, so please make sure you make the most of it because we're creating them for a reason. But apart from that, guys, that's it from me today. Don't finish your learning here. Please go ahead and watch this video to give you an understanding of some different KPIs that you actually need to be tracking within your agency. Because like I said, it's really, really a gold mine and it's an easy way to 10x your business just by getting a clear understanding of what's actually going on behind the scenes. If you have any questions about anything I talked about today, make sure to leave a comment here, obviously within the school community. And apart from that, guys, it's been a pleasure actually recording this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.